We are getting out the watercolors again this week to do something I'd never tried. It's a simple, relaxing process that can be enjoyed from beginner to expert. And for those of us with less watercolor experience, it's a great way to familiarize ourselves with how we can layer with watercolors and the effect it creates. Grab your watercolors, some water, a soft brush, and this is one project that a hairdryer or heat tool can be very useful, but totally optional. Welcome to Better with Art. I'm Melinda, and I'm here to encourage you to reclaim your creativity and practice creative self-care with weekly small art prompts that can be done in an art journal like this one or on paper if you don't have one. I do suggest, if you are going to participate with my simple form of art journaling without an art journal, you have a folder or something in which you can keep your papers, as one of the benefits of art journaling is the privacy, a place for us to express ourselves and experiment without fear of what others will think. Our first step this week is to tape down the edges of our page or paper. I often forget this step when working with watercolors. If you fold out one page and put it flat on your desk, the tape allows you to not only keep your edges neat, it keeps your paper from buckling as much. Now, as I've said about these art journals, I absolutely love these and I love the paper. It will buckle a little with water, but it will flatten out beautifully. But this way you have less chance of your paper buckling in such a way that you have puddles or you're running off the edges. So the tape protects our work surface, it protects other pages in our art journal, and also gives us a nice, clean border, which can lend our work another level of, how shall we say, artiness? We are working with just one color this week, and it can be any color you choose. I chose black because I thought it would be a good way to illustrate the effect we are demonstrating this week. And I don't use black much. If you've seen any of my videos with watercolors, it's usually the 3 primaries and the 3 secondaries. So red, yellow, blue, green, orange, purple that I work with my color mixing. I put some water in my handy lid color mixing area and put in just a small amount of black and lay down a very pale grayish wash. Using a hairdryer or heat tool to dry our layers between them is very helpful. It can also create a more even look when the paper is buckling a little, as almost all paper does when it's wet, along with saving time. It can also create some really interesting darker areas on edges, but that's something we'll also play with later. We'll be having a little bit more intricate fun with layering next week. For our next layer, we add a little bit more of the same pigment we used in our initial very pale wash. Make sure you have enough that you are reasonably sure you can fill another entire layer or more. We'll create another wash, but first we'll paint a circle. You can choose where you want yours, and then we paint the entire rest of our page. I tried to make sure I kept working all the way around my circle so as not to let edges dry, to keep an even look in each layer. You will see me tidying up my edges a bit. They don't have to be perfect, and they won't end up perfect, and they look better a little wonky. The perfection of our circles is not the important part of this exercise. In fact, you could use any shape your little heart desires. I just find circles so relaxing. And they do make this project much easier, less effort. And we'll get to play around with other shapes next week. What is it about that curved shape that just quiets the mind? If you've been around a while, you know that circles do pop up from time to time. Just enjoy filling the rest of your page with a soft wash of color. Enjoy the feel of the wet brush across the page and let it quiet your mind. Because that is a big part of what Better with art is. A chance to sit down and make art with no other real purpose than an act of creative self-care. We are wired for creativity, made in the image of the Creator. And when we're not taking time to practice creativity in ways that are meaningful and enjoyable, we aren't as healthy as we could be. And there is something about the act of making art, no matter if you consider yourself an artist or not, that is really good for our brains on multiple levels, science is showing. And I can tell you from personal experience, it can have a huge impact on our mental health. One could start this project with enough water to do all of the layers, but I don't really have a good way to gauge that. So my goal right now is to create a slightly darker shade of gray than my last one. It can be pretty difficult to tell how much black pigment you have in this small of an amount of water. But we do our best, and there will be at least one layer where I experiment with what happens if we use exactly the same shade. This time we start by creating another circle outside our first, leaving enough space that we can see how our layers build. You've probably noticed that this layer was significantly darker than I was going for, but that's okay. As I said, our art journals are a place for us to experiment. So it's pretty cool that we can learn as we relax. Even if you only have 5 minutes, you can sit down and lay down a wash of color. You don't have to have a lot of free time to practice creative self-care, and you don't need to spend a lot of money to reclaim your creativity. I always used to use the Crayola Basic 8 set of watercolors, but it was more difficult for me to keep recommending that when it was harder to get a single pack on Amazon, so I experimented with some others. I don't recommend the Crazy Art, but if that's all you have access to, you can make it work. It does cost less than the Praying that I'm currently using, but it also won't go as far. So far, I am liking how the Praying performs even better than my old favorite Crayolas. Whatever watercolors you use, no matter how cheap or expensive they are, make sure they dry before you close your lid. Make whatever adjustments make your brain feel happy, but do not get caught up in them. If you find yourself wanting to make a lot of adjustments, just breathe and let it go. Another layer painted means another layer to allow to dry or to make dry. I did not add any pigment before I started laying down this next layer, nor did I add water because that would have made it lighter. So now you are seeing the exact same shade that I just laid down in the last layer being laid down on top of it, which seems like an awkward way of wording that, but that's all my brain has right now, and it may make perfect sense. Gotta say, fall allergies in Central New York are real. Everyone in my household is sick. And the head congestion, well, that doesn't exactly speed my mind up. Yeah. And sometimes when I share details like that, I start to feel like I'm whining. I also think about times when I've been feeling uncomfortable with something or beyond uncomfortable and just simply heard someone articulating that they were experiencing something similar somehow helped me feel a little better. So here we are, with another layer painted and dried, and something different this time. Replenishing my water, of course, because, well, there's basically none left, and deciding this time to go lighter than last time. Getting with the brush wasn't going quickly enough, so I augmented with my spray bottle. Or at least trying to. It malfunctioned. And still more water. and finally a little bit of pigment. And you can clearly see that this puddle is lighter than the last two. But there's still a marked difference between where it's added to the previous layers and the previous layers themselves. So yes, get a feel for adding layers with the same amount of pigment, with less pigment, with more pigment. As I said, we'll play around more with layering next week. And as I also said, maybe you are really familiar with shading and layering with watercolors. You can just simply enjoy the relaxation and the opportunity to find flow where all that noise outside fades away and all that noise inside fades away. So whether you are an old hand at using a technique like this or it's something completely new, have fun, relax, and learn in the process. Again, I say that's really cool to me. As I've mentioned many times, choosing to make art making a priority instead of always being distracted by things that seemed more important was transformative for me. I gave up regular art making for years, thinking there were more important things I needed to do instead, even though I knew how balancing taking the time to make art was. So I am here to encourage you, if you've stepped away from art making, to reclaim your creativity. And I'm here to provide everyone a simple creative self-care art prompt every week. So if you haven't subscribed yet, you should do that. You can also give me a like if you are feeling inspired to make your own art. And let me know how that's going for you in the comments. In the description, you can find the link to my all-time favorite art journal for this Better with art making. As mentioned, I love the paper. I use it in all my videos and for the art journaling groups at the library where I work. Also a link to the watercolors. You may also notice below the video some items I have for sale in my fourth wall shop. I am loving my art pants. They are so comfy. I have my light colored hoodie. My dark colored hoodie is on its way, and t-shirts will be available soon. You may also see a little button for thanks, which if you are so inclined to support my channel with a small donation, you can do so there. I will keep encouraging people to take the time to practice creative self-care. I will keep showing up to remind you that taking time to make art is not a waste of time. It is vital to our mental health, and our mental health is pretty dang important. In the description, you will also find a link to sign up to receive no more than weekly emails from me. I have to admit, I have been terrible about keeping up with my emails lately. But you will also receive a link to join the private Facebook group of my Better with Art online community. We are small, slowly growing, and only encouraging. You can also sign up to be notified of upcoming online workshops and in-person workshops, demonstrations, shows, places where you can make art with me if you are in the central New York area. I feel like I've rambled a bit and probably given unnecessary information, but I also feel like I'm forgetting to say important things. And that is kind of the story of my life. I spend a lot of time feeling like I've forgotten something, and I'm right more often than I would like to be. But the most important things about Better with Art videos are the encouragement to reclaim your creativity and to practice creative self-care. The reminder that taking time for art is not a waste of time. One benefit of using the heat and pulling the tape soon after the last heat is applied is it softens the adhesive on the masking tape and helps you get a cleaner pull. As you add your layers, play with different amounts of pigments. If you want to add another dynamic, particularly with maybe a second run through the project, try some different colors. We will get into a little bit of using more than one color next week. As I mentioned, different shapes also. It's a fun project with a cool effect that builds on what we are doing here this week. Have fun, relax, make art, because we are better with art. I just remembered what I forgot, or at least one thing. One very important thing I promised would be in this week's video. The writing prompt. Like the hairdryer, it's optional, but can help you get more out of your creative self-care time. Writing can be done in your art journal, which to me, as when I started the 52-week art journal journey, art and writing, that seemed to be what art journaling would be for me. I also understand that having a separate notebook leaves you with more art pages to work with and could be a preferred option. This week, take a moment and consider what color represents your current mood. How well does the color you used in your art reflect it? How does that color represent your mood or your energy today? Take a few minutes to write a few lines describing what that color feels like or reminds you of. Consider it in different shades.